Perfect competition. Perfect competition has four key characteristics. First, there's many buyers and sellers. Second, it's identical product, homogeneous product. Third is price takers. So that means not any one buyer or seller can influence price. And fourth is easy entry and exit of the market. So basically this means there's no barriers to entry or nothing stopping other firms from entering the market. So now we're going to look at perfect competition in the short run. However, before we do that, we need to understand how price is set in a perfectly competitive market. So in a perfectly competitive market, there will be a market demand curve and a market supply curve, and where the two intersect, it will determine our price and quantity for the market. So now this is the price is set by the market, so no one can influence the price because there's many buyers and sellers. And so if we were to look at the individual firm now, the price that the individual firm will face for all of the product produced is P0. Now looking at the individual firm, with the market price of P0, the pink colored curve then represents the demand curve to this individual firm, but this also equals the marginal revenue curve. So regardless of the quantity that this firm produces, it will be able to sell any given quantity at P0. So it tells us the demand curve, it's what the customers are willing to pay, because no one will pay more than the market price. And it also tells us the marginal revenue curve, because every unit this firm produces will be sold at that price. So if they sell one more unit, they'll get that price as marginal revenue. So now to determine where the firm will produce, in other words, the quantity that they will produce, we need to introduce our cost curves. So we're going to put in our cost curves. So let's start with our average variable cost. So it'll look something like this, a typical smiley face. Now we won't worry with the average fixed cost, but if you recall to draw the average total cost, we're adding that average fixed cost curve to this cost curve. So it's going to come down, it's going to continually get closer and closer. So we've got our average total cost. Now our marginal cost is going to intersect the minimum of each one of these. And so our marginal cost curve is going to come down and it's going to come up. And we will have a marginal cost curve that looks like this. Now if you recall, the profit maximization rule for a firm is you're going to produce at a point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So we'll look at this point here, we'll drop a line down, and now this is going to tell us the quantity, so it'll be Q0. And so now we've determined for this firm what the quantity is going to be. Now in this case, this pink line here, so if we multiply the marginal revenue by the quantity produced, everything below this line here is going to represent total revenue. Now what we want to know is, are they producing a profit? So what we're going to do then is we'll see the intersection of the line that drops down, so the quantity. So if we're going to produce Q0 product, this is the cost per unit per product. So if we draw a line over here, so now everything below this line is our total costs. And so what we find then is the top line is our total revenue, the bottom line is our total cost. So in this case, this firm is making an economic profit of this area here. And this is in the short run. Now in the short run, there may also be a situation where a firm has an economic loss. So again, the price is set by the market, so that price becomes the demand curve, which is also the marginal revenue curve for the individual firm. You're still going to produce at the profit maximizing point where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So again, we drop a line down. This tells us the quantity we're going to produce. So in this case, it's Q0. Now, if we look, in order to find the cost at producing Q0, we actually have to draw a line up now. So still, as before, everything below this line down is going to represent total revenue. So all the area below the pink line is representing total revenue. But now the total cost, if we go up, the total cost of producing Q0 is this cost up here. So we draw a line down. And so what we find now is that our costs, so everything below this gray line, is our total costs. So now what we have is a situation where our cost is more than our revenue. And so here we've got an economic loss. Again, this is in the short run. Now, the firm will still produce. And the reason being is the price that they're getting is P0 is greater than the average variable cost. Because we see if we're going to produce Q0, the average variable cost is at this point here. And so they're covering the variable costs, and so they are continuing to produce because this distance here, this extra revenue they're getting over their variable cost is going to contribute to their fixed cost, and so they're minimizing their losses. Now what we find is if the price ever got below this point here, so if price ever falls below the minimum average variable cost, then the firm would shut down and they would not produce. Now this is important because what this means is that the marginal cost curve from this minimum point all the way up, so the marginal cost curve that is all of this area here, so above the minimum average variable cost curve, this represents, it tells us for this specific firm is what is the quantity it will produce given various prices. Because price equals marginal revenue, so if it intersects here at this point here, then we know it gives us a quantity that's going to produce. So this marginal cost curve that's above the minimum average variable cost curve also equals the supply curve for the individual firm. Now here's the cool thing, because this supply curve for the individual firm, if you add up all of those supply curves of all the firms producing the product, then this equals the supply curve in the market. Or in other words, this market supply curve equals the sum of all firm supply curves. Again, all of this, what we just talked about, is in the short run.